I don't know what happened today. I have no photos, no videos, and no memory of today. Google Maps just told me we left the campsite at about 4 in the afternoon, drove around for about an hour, and then slept in a Walmart car park in the town of Cody. We must have just been exhausted and took the day off or something. Today, we would drive into Yellowstone, choosing deliberately to enter from the eastern side. We chose to enter via this side, so we could catch a glimpse of the Smith Mansion on our way in. The Smith Mansion is an interesting building. It was built between 1971 and 1992 by a man called Francis Lee Smith. After building his family home in the early 70s, Francis decided the house needed a second floor and continued to obsessively build more and more onto this house in a haphazard DIY sort of way, ignoring any sort of planning permission or building regulations. He was so obsessed with building this house that in the 1980s, his wife divorced him due to him dedicating his life to this project. In 1992, whilst working on the house, a large section of timber came loose and knocked him off the balcony, causing him to fall to his death. Now the mansion has sat there, relatively untouched, looming over the highway into Yellowstone. I really love the story of the Smith Mansion, and I'm glad I got to see it in person. Back in 2019 when we were there, the site was up for sale, and there are a lot of signs telling people not to trespass, so we didn't get too close to the mansion, only managing to get this single photo. Still, I'm glad we got to see it because I find it fascinating. Once we arrived in Yellowstone, one of the first places we decided to stop at was Mud Volcano. Here we got a taste of all the magical geothermal features we'd be seeing a lot of over the next couple days. From Dragon Mouth Spring to Sour Lake Mud Cauldron, we loved the names they'd given to each of these geothermal features. This was also the precise moment on our trip where we learned that almost all of our video footage up until this point had been lost. Whilst filming Dragon Mouth Spring, the GoPro acted strange. I went to view the video I had just filmed, and it wasn't there. In fact, nothing was there. We ran back to the van and quickly plugged the SD card into Alicia's laptop, and the worst had happened. There was nothing there. The SD card was completely blank, and somehow some file must have got corrupted, and the SD card just completely wiped itself. Now, we had been doing some backups onto the hard drive on Alicia's laptop, but we had definitely slacked a bit. And what you've seen in this series so far is all that survived. From this point on, we agreed to do backups at every chance we got, and I'm happy to say that beyond this point, very little video footage is missing. We were very lucky that we had recently backed up some, but not all, of our Montana videos, but as you know, Northern California, Oregon and Washington were all lost. We both had a little cry upon learning this, but we really didn't want it to ruin the rest of our day, so we walked back out to the Mud Volcano area for a second time, filming everything we just saw again in an attempt to get something back.
Spa day at Yellowstone.
Oh, the Yellowstone Spa.
Alright girls, get that mud in those pores. You'd fucking die. Like, just being in there, you just die.
Yeah?
That's scary ass stuff.
Yeah, but it hurts.
So busy.
Wow.
Whoa,
that was a big one. Sure. Okay.
I'd go for a dip here. I'd dip my toes. thought you meant when you said day at the sauna.
Big cloud incoming.
Smelliest mud in the world, my guys.
This is it, isn't it?
Early explorers here also described this feature as a most repulsive and terrifying sight. A volcano-like cone 30 feet high and 30 feet wide, with mud erupting to cover tall trees. When Nathaniel P. Langford visited in 1870, however, he saw a seething, bubbling mass of mud. It's likely a violent eruption blew out the cone side, leaving the crater you see today. Friction iron sulfide powered by heavy gas discharge, the water constantly undercuts the backbone.
Cool.
Angry mud. As they consume sulfur. These microorganisms also give the locust color. That's acid.
What? Just chuck something in there. An egg? See if it fries.
After this, we moved on towards Canyon Village to get a view of Artist's Point. I believe this is where Yellowstone gets its name from, as in certain lightings, the canyon walls look subtly yellow. Continuing up the Grand Loop Road, we briefly stopped near Tower Junction to check out this entire petrified tree. This tree may look like an unremarkable dead log, but through the petrification process, it had been turned entirely into stone, and was most likely last alive about 50 million years ago. It's incredible to see that the remains of a tree from 50 million years ago is still here. By this point it was getting a bit late, and we had only seen a fraction of what we wanted to see in Yellowstone, so we made the decision to stick around for another day. There weren't many options for parking overnight in Yellowstone, so we headed up past Mammoth Hot Springs, stopping briefly not to see the springs today, but because there were just so many elk just free roaming around the village.
He's a big boy!
Is it confident?
Wow, so many of them as well.
We then exited the park from the northern gate, briefly being back in Montana for the evening. We found a free place to park on a small dirt ridge just outside of Gardiner. This was also the night we found out about the Amber Alert system in America. I got a text saying that a child had been kidnapped in the area, and to be on the lookout for a silver Toyota car. Oddly enough, the car we had parked up next to for the night almost fit the exact description of this silver Toyota, so we had a bit of an uncomfortable sleep that night. Today we headed back into the park, getting a photo of the Roosevelt Arch before heading back into Mammoth Springs to see its namesake. Mammoth Hot Springs were quite incredible, and felt rather otherworldly at times.
They're shimmering.
I particularly liked these dead trees sunken into the springs. One of the rangers told us that some scenes from a Star Trek movie or episode were filmed here, but I'm not sure which one.
Yeah, please,
I'll put that out this year at the house.
Next on the agenda was artists' paint pots. These geothermal features were much smaller, but each had very unique colours that don't ever seem to show up on film as well as they did in person.
The red and the blue one.
We also took a moment to stare into this bubbling mud pit for an extended period of time. It was quite mesmerising. After this, we drove down to Excelsior Geyser and Grand Prismatic Springs.
That's one now.
After parking up, we walked along this steamy boardwalk trail past Excelsior and its wonderful deep blue colours. The way the water bubbled and flowed was very interesting to stare at.
There it is.
Blasted right towards us. Oh wait, I'll try and get another one.
We continued along the wooden boardwalk towards Grand Prismatic Springs. The rainbow colours of this spring were quite incredible, but due to all the mist we were struggling to get a real good look at it. After slowly walking along this boardwalk, taking it all in, we were getting ready to head off to our last planned stop in Yellowstone, Old Faithful, a highly predictable geyser that erupts every 40 minutes or so. But before we left, I realised there was a nearby hiking trail that offered higher up views of Grand Prismatic Springs. It was getting late, but we would be able to make it up there before dark. However, doing this would mean we'd miss Old Faithful's last eruption for the day during daylight hours. The choice was between getting to see Grand Prismatic Springs properly from above, or seeing the park's most iconic geyser erupt, and we chose the former. Here is Grand Prismatic Springs as seen from the overlook located along the Fairy Falls Trail. I'm so glad we got to see it like this, as well as close up.
It's really nice to have access to your platinum. That's a smoky boy. Watch the yellow go by.
Oh yeah, I did.
Isn't that neat?
We continued driving down the road towards Old Faithful, but first we had to stop to get some pictures of this bison grazing right up close to the road. And finally, we still went to see Old Faithful, possibly the most iconic geyser in the park, and we only saw it in the dark. Oh well. This is the only footage I took, but I don't think you'll be able to see much. After this, we moved on, driving south for a bit, parking in some forest between Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Parks. Upon arriving at the park, one of the first places we drove to was Willow View, to take in the stunning views of the iconic Teton mountain range.
What do you see? You think we should get the bear spray?
Right here specifically.
No. Yeah.
We really loved how prominent and jagged the mountains here looked. We spoke to another park visitor who was taking in the view through binoculars and said he saw a moose. So Alicia took out her binoculars and sure enough, there was a moose grazing just in front of us. Whilst in the visitor centre, a park ranger suggested we check out the Chapel of the Sacred Heart, a beautiful Catholic chapel built in the 1930s. We really liked the stained glass window at the back. Moving on through the park, we struggled to decide on any big hikes, so mostly just went from viewpoint to viewpoint, taking it all in. The day was getting late, so we drove further down south to Jackson Hole, a very picturesque ski resort town, with the intent to go back into Teton National Park and maybe do a hike the following day. We enjoyed the atmosphere of this town so much, we decided to spend the day here, and head back into Teton National Park tomorrow. We had a lot of video footage again that I was scared to lose, so we spent a few hours in McDonald's doing a backup onto Alicia's laptop. After this, we decided to check out the National Elk Refuge, a wildlife refuge created in 1912 to protect habitat and provide sanctuary for one of the largest elk herds. At the visitor centre here, there was an owl talk on, where we got to meet some owls up close and learn a bit about them. After this, we looked around some of the shops and grabbed a couple of pints at the $1 Million Cowboy Bar before walking back to our van and sleeping for the evening. Today we headed back into Tetons National Park, still undecided on what hikes I wanted to undertake, and growing concerned about time, I decided to forego a big hike here at Tetons, instead opting to check out Mormon Row, a collection of derelict Mormon homesteads framed beautifully by the Teton mountain range. We walked around here for a while, waiting for the overcast weather to reveal the mountains fully. Ever so often you could get a glimpse of the peaks of the mountains through the clouds, so we decided to film a time-lapse here. Looking back, I do sort of regret not crossing over Jenny Lake and hiking to Inspiration Point or something. This way I would have actually walked on the Tetons, not just seen them from a distance. But I think we ultimately decided this would take all day, and we needed to start heading east as soon as possible. A big snowstorm was forecast in this area of the country, and so far we had missed it. Additionally, we wanted to get all the way to the east coast to visit our friends in Massachusetts in time for Halloween, which was about 3 weeks away at this point. So with that in mind, we packed up the GoPro and set off east. As we drove further up into the mountains of the Shoshone National Forest, the evidence of this snowstorm quickly became apparent. We stopped at an ominously named place called Deception Creek to enjoy our first real snow of this trip.
What are you doing? Yeah, it's snow. What are you doing?
Are you meant to lie on your back?
think you're meant to lie on your back, yeah? Snow Angel. You having fun?
Yeah.
Oh, don't want to lose that. Ow. Oh. Yeah. So we've pulled over at the side of the road because we decided it would be a very good idea to make a snowman. How's the snowman coming on?
I'm waiting him up.
Yeah, he's a bit brown. Bit of a brown man. And here he is for the whole world to see. Drive past. Snowpunk. He's an angry guy. Come say hi to him.
After this, we continued on east, eventually coming out of the mountains, travelling now through the vast, untouched wilderness of the Great Plains. The snowstorm had now become just a regular storm, but we saw fork lightning off in the distance. It was very atmospheric. Eventually, after driving 3 hours through this, we stopped in the city of Casper for the night, sleeping in our familiar Walmart car park. Not a very interesting day today. We stocked up on food and stuff at Walmart, did some more video backups, and left Casper late in the afternoon, heading further to the east of Wyoming, aiming to get to Devil's Tower. After driving for 3 hours, we were still another hour or so away from Devil's Tower, so we decided to call it a day. We parked along a residential street in a pretty small town called Moorcroft. As we settled down for the evening, we actually had a police officer knock on our van in the middle of the night, asking what we were doing. I replied trying to sleep, and he seemed amused. After hearing my English accent, he suddenly became more friendly, and asked where we were from and what we were doing out here. I explained we were going to Devil's Tower the next day, and needed somewhere to park the van up for the night, asking if this area was okay for that. He told me he had some reports of suspicious activity along the street, and that's why he knocked on the van door. After this, he left us alone. I got the impression not a lot happens here, so the cops saw a weird-looking camper van with California number plates, and figured we were suspicious or something. Quite an odd, yet memorable encounter. Our last day in Wyoming had us check out Devil's Tower, this sort of odd anomaly of a natural structure composed of igneous rock, which points out prominently from its surrounding landscape. It was the first ever national monument in the United States, which is sort of like a smaller national park, I believe. The tower itself is not that big, so we spent maybe about 30 minutes slowly walking around the base of it, and a further 30 minutes learning about it in the visitor centre. After this, we headed off further east, driving for another hour and a half, crossing our next state border into South Dakota, where, the next day, we planned on checking out the famous Mount Rushmore. Thanks again for watching another one of my videos. I'm feeling inspired to keep going with these until I finally covered my entire trip from 5 years ago. If you feel inclined, please share the video with anyone you know who might be interested. Thank you.